Welcome to Madison City Channel's Know Your Candidates interviews, co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Dane County. I'm your interviewer, Marilyn Townsend, and I would like to introduce to you Andrew Hysell, running for the State Assembly in District 48. As we begin, I'd like you to give an opening statement as to the educational, vocational, and civic experience you have which qualifies you for this office and why you are running for the State Assembly.
Great. Thanks very much, Marilyn, and thank you for the League of Women Voters for providing this forum. It's something that the League of Women Voters, it's a really important role of the organization to educate voters, which is an essential part of our democracy. So thank you. My background is I'm from Wisconsin. I went to Carroll. I worked in the state legislature for Democrats in the mid-90s for a state representative from Milwaukee, and also for the Assembly Democratic Campaign Committee. And after that, I proceeded to do some campaigns around the country for other Democrats. I ended up in Washington, D.C., working for a congressman from Maine as his legislative assistant, Tom Allen, a really strong environmentalist. I then decided to go to law school. So I went to law school at night, worked by day. And when I graduated from Georgetown, I then proceeded to work for Save the Children and working around issues of childhood health and early childhood programming and public education across the country. I came home to Wisconsin and in the mid 2010s, and something just struck me that broke my heart, which was our state had gone in a really off direction in terms of its priorities. We had public unions eliminated. We had private unions hamstrung. We had education funding going down. The share of it being funded by the state was going down. We saw mass transit projects being shelved, and we saw private prisons being used at an extraordinary rate. And what I committed myself to do then is, as I got a job with Lawton Cates as an attorney, but what I committed myself to do in my spare time was to fight to bring back our shared values and bring them in center. And we elected Tony Evers twice. We helped elect Janet Protasewicz. And last summer, when Speaker Voss was threatening to impeach Janet Protasewicz for political reasons, which would have been unconstitutional, myself and Tim Burns, another progressive lawyer, we filed a lawsuit against Robin Voss and the state legislature to prevent her unconstitutional impeachment. And from all the efforts of the Democratic Party and the activists in Sun Prairie and in Madison, over the years, we've been able to get things back on track, and we're making progress, and it's really exciting. And now, for the first time, we actually could win a majority in the state house in the state assembly after so many years. So it's a really exciting time in Wisconsin, and we're moving in the right direction. And I'm excited to use my skills, both my policy background, working in the state and the U.S. state legislature, and in the Congress, along with my local connections with Rotary, the Optimist Club, the Sun Prairie Chamber of Commerce, to really provide effective representation while also continuing the charge to restore funding for public education, take the Medicaid money, reduce healthcare costs, and strengthen our labor unions. And finally, focus on housing and protecting the environment.
Is there any process you believe the Wisconsin legislature should put in place now for redistricting after the next national census?
That's a great question, and I think it is something we need to support, which is a systemic strategy to ensure that we can have fair maps. At the heart of our system of government is democracy. We are the world's great democracy, and it is so important at the state level and at the local level here in Wisconsin that we prioritize that. Democracy cannot happen with extreme partisan gerrymanders. When you give power to the people who control everything to decide how they can be elected, it's ultimately going to result in problems. one thing the United States has done so well with our form of government at the state and the federal level. So in the state of Wisconsin, we have checks and balances. If the legislature and a governor united can completely gerrymander the system, then we have lost the ability to function as a democracy. So we need a system, something that is outside the political realm, a commission, some sort of set of experts, potentially with judges, to make these kinds of choices, because at the end of the day, we need to represent the people through their representatives. And you can only do that if they actually have an opportunity to vote. And if you have a heavily gerrymandered district, you're depriving people of a right to vote and have a decent chance of their candidate winning.
What issues, if any, do you think you could work on effectively in a bipartisan manner in the next session?
It's a really good question. I think the Republicans should come around and accept the Medicaid dollars. Okay. Medicaid money is available to the state of Wisconsin. We're paying for it. We're sending our tax payments to the federal government. And here in Wisconsin, back home, we're not getting the benefit. That is something that Democrats and Republicans should come together on. I believe it's an anachronistic, like holdover of political game, goes back to Obama, that needs to be put aside. And I think Republicans and Democrats, I think we can do that for the good of our state. I believe people should be covered by health insurance. I believe that it's a human right. I think Republicans can look at it and say, hey, this is our money. Why are we giving it away and not getting it back? I think other issues that we can work on, I guess I'm really excited about the opportunity to work with like-minded folks or people that are from different perspectives. It's really great to be inclusive and collaborative. But until the MAGA Republican fever breaks and we have a situation where we can work together and it's not a zero-sum game, I am going to stand up for our rights. I'm going to stand up for our rights to vote. I'm going to stand up for reproductive choices, the rights for people to choose who they want to be married to. And it's why I'm going to propose a constitutional amendment and start the process to create an explicit right to privacy in our Wisconsin state constitution. We'll protect the right to contraception, to reproductive choices, to marry who you like, who you love. All these things, like, I think are something Democrats and Republicans should get behind because they're intrinsic to the United States and like what we're all about and what we're about here in Wisconsin.
What role, if any, do you think the legislature should have in addressing conditions in Wisconsin state prisons?
So Wisconsin has 311 incarcerated individuals for every 100,000 people. It's slightly lower than the national average. However, it's very high if you can look at other industrialized nations. People in prison are human beings and they need to be treated with dignity. And no one benefits by having prisons that treat people inhumanely. The prisoners don't benefit, and then our country as a whole doesn't benefit because we don't rehabilitate. Instead, we create even bigger problems. So I believe that we should not have for-profit prisons. I think that was a hallmark of the previous administration, the Walker administration, and it drove profits over care, over services. I think we also should consider, I've actually worked as a trial lawyer. My law firm has worked representing prisoners who've been beaten and had their civil rights deprived of them under the US Constitution. I would just say that in the end, I think we need to have more preventative measures to try to stem some of these issues before they result in any sort of a criminal activity. And I think as we invest more in public education, in healthcare, and other sorts and good paying jobs, I think ultimately you'll see over the long term, the need for prisons will go down.
What role do you think the state legislature has in ensuring successful outcomes for all students, including those with disabilities?
I think the state has a very important role in ensuring successful outcomes for students. And the first role they have is to properly fund public education. Public education is what Wisconsin is built on. Our success in the 20th century is because we had a public education system that could reach in across the state and provide a high quality level of education for every student, for every child. And we've recognized now that early learning, starting at 0 up to age 5, is critically important as well. In fact, some say it's even more important. These investments are something the state must prioritize. There's a $300 million request from the Child Care Association for high quality childcare statewide to help working families and also to provide critical early learning opportunities. That's something the state can do. The shared revenue, we need to provide more funding to localities. We have to prioritize education, pay our teachers more. We need to make sure all of our kids have access if they're striving readers or they have a special need, they need the supports and the individualized instruction for them to get them to be able to be successful. If they're high achievers in our public system, we need to help those high achievers go even further. But at the end of the day, the public education system is one of the most effective examples we have of government working collaboratively with communities to accomplish an amazing objective. And I really am a strong proponent of the state supporting public education and ensuring equitable opportunities for every student and meeting their individual needs, including needs of children who have special needs.
Are there any steps you believe the legislature should take to further address mental health and substance abuse disorders?
I'll give you a great example of something that was done by U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin as something we could look at and then talk about a success story here in Wisconsin. So Tammy Baldwin with Paul Ryan passed the Jason Simkuski Memorial Act, which essentially had the VAs stop overprescribing opioids for veterans who are dealing with mental health issues and instead focus on alternative therapies. I work with as a board member of a group called Trauma Recovery Yoga, where the program is around the world in war-torn areas, but they also work in inner cities and also with veterans here in the United States. And the idea is that you can use different techniques to address some of the effects of PTSD. And I think that what Tammy Baldwin did was amazing because across the country now, veterans are getting those kinds of interventions and fewer opioids. Here in the state, we have for veterans' mental health specifically, but it's a good example because it could be replicated more generally with the population. We have the Veterans Outreach and Recovery Program through the Wisconsin Department of Veteran Affairs. They have case managers around the state living in the communities where veterans are, helping identify veterans with mental health concerns, and then getting them referrals to social service agencies, both public and private, to address their needs. It's a great example that actually other states are looking to Wisconsin on, and it's an example of how the state here can do innovative things to really make sure that we can find people who have mental health concerns and support them with effective therapies at a time when sometimes there's a real stigma associated with it, and they need that kind of local outreach from somebody they trust. So I think that's a great example that I would seek to continue to support and expand into other areas in Wisconsin.
What other priorities do you have for your term in office?
So I've been knocking a number of doors, and it's really great to meet with folks at the door and talk to them because it's the best way to understand what I need to focus on. And there is I will say that people in this country deserve quality health care. They do not need to be one medical emergency away from a bankruptcy. People in this country deserve a public education that's good, that they can go to their neighborhood school and that their teachers are, fully staffed and that their students are receiving the right kind of instruction and support. People deserve to know that they're going to retire comfortably in this country. If you work a full-time job, during your lifetime, you should not have to fear not being able to afford your taxes or your prescription drugs. So these are the things that I hear from people. They want these things. And I strongly believe there's a lot of things that we know work. And so we need to embrace them. We need to strengthen labor unions. Labor unions are a private sector solution to a lot of the problems that we face in this country. Better paying jobs, better healthcare benefits, and retirement. And it's not a government program. It's workers coming together to negotiate the terms of their employment. We have contracts for our mortgage, our student loans, our cable bill. But one of the most important things, if not the most important thing in our life, our jobs, most people have no contract for it. Why? In a private sector economy, why? And so to me, I really want to focus on labor issues. And again, I also want to focus on reducing healthcare costs, public education, and the environment, because I really, with what's happening with the climate around the country, it's a real concern.
What would you like to say to the viewing audience as we complete this interview?
I would say that democracy requires your participation at any level. It's public service. I hear a lot of people talking about, they're concerned that maybe they don't want to vote because a candidate doesn't appeal to them 100%. And I would say to them that consider public service to vote. It's a public service. Some people do public service in different ways. We have judges, we have elected officials, we have volunteers who go out and knock doors. We have people who make phone calls, people who write checks to their local candidates. You can do something and it's public service, and it's a really small thing, which is you can educate yourself about elections and then go out and vote and view it as something you can do for your country, because this democracy will not survive in Wisconsin and in the United States if we don't vote. That's what I'm telling people. I'm saying, look at it as something you would do that's good, that's good for your country, and that it's something when we celebrate veterans and we celebrate their sacrifices. This is something you can do in the here and now that honors their sacrifices. And it's something that today, facing the threats that we're facing to our democracy, it's so very important. And I'm really, and I will say, I'm really excited when I talk to people, and I really believe that great things lay ahead of us. We're making amazing progress in this state under Governor Tony Evers, and now with the Supreme Court that's following the rule of law. I see even better things ahead when the Democrats win the majority this fall. It's going to be great. We'll have an opportunity to work with the Republican Senate potentially and get some things done and show the people in Wisconsin that we can get things done and that we really should be working together.
I want to thank Andrew Hysell for speaking with us, and thank the viewing audience for taking the time to know your candidates. I want to remind everyone that primary election day is Tuesday, August 13th, and the general election is Tuesday, November 5th. Every election is important. Please vote. On behalf of Madison City Channel and the League of Women Voters of Dane County, thank you for watching this presentation. Thank you.